Hello everyone, I hope your day is starting off just great. Another amazing picture of our beautiful country, Canada. This picture, posted by Eric, it's Malign Lake in Jasper. He shared this amazing pic for all of us to see in the I Choose Canada group. Thanks, Eric, for posting this picture. In this video, I want to talk to you about the way politics is going in our country. I'm going to read you a couple of posts from the opposition leader, Mr. Pierre Poilievre, and then I'm going to ask you to leave in the comment section what you think of those posts. Are they helpful and positive in our political discourse for our country, or are they not? Number one, and I'll put it on the screen here, the Prime Minister said everything would get better, but after 6 months, everything is worse. Crime, tariffs, inflation, deficits, immigration, housing, all spiraling out of control. Mark Carney prances around abroad while Canadians pay the price at home. And then this next post, Mark Carney is back on his taxpayer-funded jet back to the UK for more photo ops. Of course, it's a taxpayer-funded jet. He works for the government, and it just ironically, Mr. Poilievre lives in a tax-funded residence, but that's besides the point. This would be a great opportunity for him to apologize for causing the British housing and inflation crisis during his disastrous stint as the country's bank governor. Now he's doing the same to Canada. Okay, so those posts were made. They were put out there, very little analysis or reporting on it, but absorbed by the conservative base. And you'll notice both those comments, everything in them was negative. And this is a phenomenon that's happening now around the world. And the poster child for the success of this strategy, of course, is Donald Trump. So let's go through these two statements that Pierre Poilievre made and do some fact checking. I'll do it because the mainstream media won't. Mark Carney has been in power for 6 months and everything is getting worse. Everything is spiraling out of control. Crime, number one. This is the latest data provided by StatsCan. On the graph over here, the light blue line represents violent crime rate per 100,000 people of population. And you can see that since the mid-80s, violent crime has been fairly flat in Canada. Property crime in red peaked in 1991 and has been on a steady decrease until about 2013, and then it's slightly trending up. So total crime in Canada, all of these put together, peaked in 1991, has been steadily decreasing, and then at about 2013, it turned flat to slightly going up. As Pierre Poilievre posted, spiraling out of control. Tariffs are spiraling out of control and getting worse over the past 6 months, and it's Mark Carney's fault. Well, actually, I think we all know that tariffs are this guy's idea, and we all know that the US has imposed tariffs on our exports. Inflation is getting worse and spiraling out of control, and it's Mark Carney's fault. Here we are on the Trading Economics website, Canadian inflation rate. And since Mark Carney was elected in April, inflation has come in monthly at 1.7, 1.7, 1.9, 1.7, and 1.9, well under the Bank of Canada's 2% target range, has enabled the Bank of Canada to start lowering interest rates, but according to Pierre Poilievre, spiraling out of control. You want to see spiraling out of control? Let's look at the US inflation rate since Donald Trump has implemented a tariff tax on everything that all companies in the US import. Since April, their inflation rate has gone from 2.3% and is now getting close to 3%, well above their central bank's 2% target rate. After 6 months, the deficit is getting worse. It's spiraling out of control, and it's Mark Carney's fault. Let's look at a graph here, again from Statistics Canada, Canadian general government deficit as a percentage of nominal gross domestic product. And you can see the deficit over time since 1992. What is this period here between 1996 and about 2008, when the deficit was actually negative, a period of about a decade that we had a surplus? Who was the Prime Minister between 1998 and 2008? Well, that would be Liberal Prime Minister Jean Chrétien, who was elected in 1993 and served till 2003, and followed by Paul Martin, who was the Prime Minister from 2003 to 2006. And looking at this graph here, that was followed by about an 8-year period where there was deficits being run up to 3.6% of GDP. Who was the Prime Minister during that period that flipped our country from running surpluses immediately into deficit? Well, that would be Conservative Prime Minister Stephen Harper, who took over in 2006 and was Prime Minister till 2015. From about 2014 till about 2020, Canada's finances were fairly balanced. And then in response to the pandemic, there was this huge spike in spending around the world, not just Canada, all G7 and Western countries. And I did a separate video about this where I analyzed this in great detail. You can watch that video. I'll post a link to it here in the top right corner. But I discussed how I felt that this was a big mistake for all countries in the world, this massive spike in spending. But it is true that our government is running deficits recently, and Mark Carney has said to expect a fairly large deficit. He'll announce the numbers at the beginning of November when he releases his budget. And that is something that I hope all members of Parliament will discuss and debate. And they should debate what things we should cut back on so we don't get into a situation where we hit another spike like this. After 6 months, immigration is worse. It's spiraling out of control, and it's Mark Carney's fault. In this CBC article dated September 24th, last week, talking about the most recent numbers, Canada's population growth almost flat in second quarter as number of non-residents declines. The largest quarterly decline since 1971. And here's a graph of Canada's population growth, which peaked last October and has declined rapidly and is fairly flat now, hovering just above zero. So is that what Pierre Poilievre is referring to? That having virtually no population growth means immigration is spiraling out of control? After 6 months, housing is worse. It's spiraling out of control, and it's Mark Carney's fault. Here's a graph of Canada's average house prices from Trading Economics monthly. And you can see that the average price of a house in Canada has dropped from a peak last November of $713,000 to the last number in August, $687,000. So is that what Pierre Poilievre is talking about? That the price of houses is going down? They're spiraling out of control and they should go up? Wait a minute, he was complaining that the price of houses was going up last year. Now he's complaining that the price of houses is going down. Mark Carney should apologize to those people in the UK for causing that out of control inflation when he was governor of the Bank of England from 2013 to 2020. Well, let's look at a graph of the average inflation rate in the United Kingdom. Well, in 2013, the inflation rate in the UK was 2.57%. And then dropped to virtually zero in 2015. And by the end of Mark Carney's term, he left with an inflation rate of under 1%. Here's a graph of the Consumer Price Index in the UK from 1960 to 2024. Look at the period between 2013 and 2020. One of the lowest periods of inflation in UK recent history. But according to Pierre Poilievre, Mark Carney should apologize for that record. So how would you characterize those posts that Pierre Poilievre made? Why would he assert those things? Why would he say that? They're obviously wrong, misleading, amplified rhetoric, or let's call it like it is, lies. Why would he choose to lie? And why would he always choose something negative? Because lying works, and it stems from a characteristic of human nature. We tend to believe negative things more quickly than we believe positive things. As an example, let me give you a little example here. You're trying to plan a holiday for yourself. You want to go visit Prince Edward Island. So you talk to some of your friends who you know have been there. Bert and Ethel have already visited Prince Edward Island, and you ask them, how did you like Prince Edward Island? And they say it was great. We really enjoyed it. And we went to see the Anne of Green Gables house. Then you ask your other friends, Jim and Shelley, did you enjoy Prince Edward Island when you went to visit? And they said, yeah, they really liked it. They really liked the countryside. Now, having received that positive information, it's very likely for the average person to accept or reject it. It's almost 50-50. Well, I don't really trust Bert and Ethel, and I'm not really interested in the Anne of Green Gables house. And I don't know, if all Jim and Shelley liked was the countryside, I don't know if we should go there. Positive information has trouble penetrating. But if you ask Jim and Shelley, how did you like your trip to Prince Edward Island? And they say, oh, we hated it. The people were really rude. We didn't feel safe. When we went out at night, there were strange people everywhere. We thought we were going to get mugged. We really didn't like it. One negative review is much more likely to sway your decision. That's just how humans work. And that's why populist politicians that spew negativity nonstop are successful, because it works. And this is the thing we have to be so careful of in Canada, because if a politician is just allowed to spew lies without any pushback, without any fact-checking, if they can flood the zone with nothing but lies, those lies become normalized, and a lot of easily influenced, non-critical thinking people believe them. And the extreme result of that is this. You get a mainstream media generated headline here on Bloomberg that reads, Trump orders U.S. troops to Portland, citing anti-ICE protests. Is that what actually happened? Did he simply cite anti-ICE protests? Well, let's read exactly what he said. At the request of Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem, I am directing Secretary of War Pete Hegseth to provide all necessary troops to protect war-ravaged Portland and any of our ICE facilities under siege from attack by Antifa and other domestic terrorists. I am also authorizing full force if necessary. Thank you for your attention in this matter. Does his statement and what's reported in the headline on Bloomberg, does that match? The picture behind me is of Portland, Oregon, the city that Donald Trump describes as war-ravaged. This is a picture of Gaza City. This is what a war-ravaged city looks like. The words, the lies, and the inflammatory rhetoric have worked in the United States, and it's now out of control. And you Americans, you have a big issue to deal with. But this video is about Canada, and I'm not equating Pierre Poilievre to Donald Trump or the Conservative Party here to the MAGA Republican Party, although Daniel Smith openly says that the Conservative Party in Canada is much more aligned with the Republicans down in the United States than the Liberal Party. That's besides the point. But what I'm pointing out is that the strategy and the playbook is the same. It's better for Pierre Poilievre politically to just lie and amplify and spew negativity rather than work with the other members in the House of Commons to try and work on some of these issues. Housing and tariffs, inflation, deficits and immigration. All of those can be improved. And members of the House should work together to try and do that. And I fear that if the Conservative Party during their upcoming leadership review decides to keep Pierre Poilievre as their leader, then he's already shown that this is his strategy, to just lie, inflammatory rhetoric, fear and deceit, and do it even more. He probably thinks that he wasn't negative enough last campaign, and he's going to ramp it up. And this is not a healthy thing for our country. This is the type of thing that if we let permeate into our political discourse can lead to chaos like it is down in the United States, to just division and chaos. And I want nothing to do with that. And that's why I detest Pierre Poilievre, not the Conservative Party, Pierre Poilievre. And I think that the Conservative Party can do themselves a favor and pick someone with much more integrity and intelligence, and someone who might put forth a vision that Canadians can embrace and they could actually win an election. But as I asked you at the beginning of the video, I'm really interested in your comments in the comment section. What do you think of those two media posts that Pierre Poilievre has made? Do you think it's healthy for Canada? Do you think it's a good strategy? Do you think all this is just politics? Let me know what you think, but let me point out one more thing. We can't count on the mainstream media. They're just the amplifier. They're just going to repost this stuff. There's going to be no critical analysis coming from the mainstream media. And that's why I thank all of you who have been subscribing to this channel or becoming channel members by clicking the join button below. I'm completely independent and spent time actually fact-checking some of the things that Pierre Poilievre said in those two posts. He's made hundreds of posts like that, and when you fact-check them, this is the type of thing that you find. I've presented it for you in this video. Thanks for watching, everyone. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will catch you all on the next one.